Telling your life story and telling it straight. Whenever I meet someone new and they ask me what I do or where I'm from, I know that usually they want to know more than just that. Who am I is really what they're asking. And when I try to answer that question, I often feel myself struggling to tell them the real truth about who I am. At least it's the truth I've come to know. I think everything in my life can be interpreted in at least two ways, negative and positive. The trick is to balance the two and come up with some sort of balanced truth. The negative story and the positive story are almost like two people, both me, one who sees the positive and one who sees the negative. For most people, telling their life story means thinking about it in chronological terms, and that's understandable because it relates to numeric age and years, birthdays, anniversaries, and that sort of thing. But that's not really what we mean by telling your life story and telling it straight. So it's not exactly about relating the details of when you were born or where you grew up, or the schools you attended or the jobs you had, although all of those can certainly play a part in discovering and telling your real story. Telling your story straight means carefully turning your mind back, searching for those moments when perhaps you felt a bit of a life shift, an internal change. Maybe it was the moment when you learned something new and deeply important about yourself, or your partner, or your children, or the world. It may or may not involve a moment when you suffered an emotional wound. Telling your life story straight involves finding those life-changing moments, considering them carefully and relating in a positive way both to yourself and the world how those events made you the person you are today. Because each successive change forms a building block of who you are today. And as you think back, you'll see that over a lifetime, everything changes constantly, sometimes radically, often in just the space of a few moments, a few hours, a few days. Core changes to who you are bubble up, released by emotions as they rise and fall, ebb and flow, day by day, year by year. Telling your life story straight means documenting the trail and meaning of those deeply personal moments. And why bother? It's up to you, of course, whether or not you choose to embark on such a journey. Many people find telling their life story straight improves their understanding of the past, as well as the present, but more importantly, strengthens their sense of inner well-being. It's dangerous, of course, as any deeply honest introspection can be. Interpreting your life events in a very negative way, as you may already have found, will only tend to make your future seem even darker. Yeah, some aspects of your internal critique may be negative and dark. We all have those memories. And it's not necessary to try to make them any less negative. But can you find the positive benefit hidden deep inside the negative? Can you celebrate your successes at the same time you acknowledge your mistakes? Can you accept that you, like all of us, have faced difficulties, while nourishing a glimpse of that small flame of redemption, of hope, that in the future you'll do better? If you can tell your story straight by acknowledging both your past successes and failures, with the determination to learn from all of them, you're likely to feel a much greater sense of self-worth and well-being. That's the way we explain ourselves, not only to ourselves, but to those around us, our community, as well as to the wider world. So, how to begin? Some people know intuitively how to do it. Effortlessly, they weave a positive life story, highlighting their successes and integrating their failures as part of a positive life story. But if you're like most of us, it isn't so easy. If so, here's a couple of ways you might get yourself started. Consider what makes you want to get up every day. Is it work? Is it your family? Your pet? If there's a particular part of your life that animates you, excites you to get up and get going, start there and determine and explore all the connections and their meanings that branch out from that activity. If there's nothing that makes you want to get up and get going, think back to a time when you did feel energetic about life, about going forward into your future, and explore that. Either way, remember what difficulties came along to test you and how you responded. Another way to get started on your life story is to think back to a time in your life when you felt in control, really strong and happy, and start there, exploring your life from that time forward. If no such moment exists, imagine yourself back in the womb, cradled safe and sound, and try beginning it there. Then move forward in time, remembering the good and the bad, and how you responded, how it affected you, what you learned, and how those things might have affected you today. Either way, the idea is to find meaning in both your successes and failures, your heights and depths. It's not necessary to make up a happy ending. Few of us are there yet. For many, the joy is in the journey, not the ending. And understanding your ups and downs, the ups and downs of your journey, can make you stronger and happier. Where your greatest challenges are is also where your greatest joys can be found. If you're still having trouble getting started, consider choosing one or more of the following sentences and write a couple of pages. Handwritten is best. Write them about a time in your life that it was like that sentence. It's just for you. You don't have to get into painful details if you don't want. No one else will see it. It's a way just to begin to explore. Sentence number 1. Think about this. I was only little, but ... Or sentence 2 could be, I was trying hard to get it right and ... What happened? Or sentence 3, just then everything changed ... Or you could try this. I couldn't believe it when I found out that ... You fill in the blanks. Or I was so very happy. I couldn't stop grinning, but then ... This approach sometimes works well because it helps overcome our natural tendency to avoid the most obvious life-changing events. I don't know why. Maybe sometimes they're just too painful or too complicated or both. But those are often the very same ones that probably shape large parts of our lives today. So when you start with one of those sentences, it helps focus your perspective so that you can see the obvious. And once focused, it might lead you to something else that was an important part of your situation. Did it come from something that happened when you were little? Was it because of your parents or your siblings? You don't have to have the answers. The idea is to let the act of writing, the very physical act of moving your hand as you write, stimulate your memory. Handwriting is the best that way because your hand and memory are thought to be connected. And remember, don't overthink as you write. Just write and write and write. Okay, so it's time for me to get personal and show you how I'm going to write my life story. When I think back over my life, there are a few obvious life-changing moments I can think of right away. So I probably won't need one of those starter sentences. I think I'll start with one of my earliest memories, a painful one, an upsetting one that I still revisit today at almost age 73. I remember being in our living room. It was public housing, a row house. I was waiting there with my 2 brothers and our mother as my father and the doctor went upstairs to see my grandmother. Only half an hour before, my older brother and I had found her unconscious on the bed. I remember discovering her lying there. It seemed like she'd been standing, looking in the mirror, taking off her coat, when she just fell over backwards onto the bed. She wasn't moving at all, and my brother shouted for our mom, who immediately took us downstairs. I think that was the first time I had ever felt that sad and frightened. Tears came, but they were no comfort. I felt real anguish. I was so afraid she was dead, but I hoped for the best. I hoped that she would come downstairs with the doctor. Grammy had always been the one person I could go to for protection. She loved me unconditionally. She even admired me and was proud of me. But a few minutes later, the doctor came down with my father, no Grammy. They talked briefly and turned to us and said, "I'm sorry to say that your Grammy has died." So, okay, what happened to me at that moment? A time 65 years ago that I remember so clearly. How should I portray it or not portray it in my life story?